So we're day 18, and I finally have some views to show. So what I've been able to do is get 2 of the views in place and working. I haven't done the inflow or outflow from this particular portion of the sheets, but what I've been trying to focus on is get the underlying stat relationships working and functioning so that I can arrive at the derivatives before I move on to the more complicated bit, which is, of course, the action trainer. So I'll just give you a walkthrough of what I've got here. To begin with, the first area is, of course, the stat assignment area. And then I also have the drop-down view for the combat HUD, which inherits a lot of its values from the stat sheet. So as you can see on the left here, we have our 8 stats. On the right, we have our derivative stats, which are connected to our pips. At the top, we have the character. We have a dummy character in here. Celine is a Salazari female. She started the game with 36,000 essence. She's spent her way down now to 31,400 essence. So that places her in the adult stage of her life, which is then passing down her health die, her energy die, and a fractional for her move. So if I assign a pip, like the health pip here, to a value, let's say vitality, it's going to inherit the proficiency value, which is derived from the base stat, to add it to this area. So the 2 gets passed over. That's 2d12, which is 24 health, which is, of course, going to be reflected as her new maximum hit points. Likewise, we have her energy value. We'll tie this to fortitude. So in this case, the energy value is taking the whole number and not the proficiency number. So she has 664 energy, again, inherited by the combat sheet. Her move, which let's say we'll place it on her physique. Her move is 56 divided by 7, which is 8. And so I can have a character move these around in order to be able to change the base functions of the way that these stats operate. And in theory, although this functionality is not in place, the life stage and the species will define specifically what I can and can't drag onto. So my thought is when I start dragging this, that some of these items will gray out. And that way you can't assign things to specific drop slots or whatever to put pips in certain places for inappropriate assignments for that species. And as you unlock new aspects of your character, you'll be able to assign things differently. So parry and clash and dodge work a little bit differently in that they inherit the full value of what they're connected to and then form an average. And a parry is the value that you add to a D100 when you're doing a roll off to determine whether or not, like in the case of a parry, it's the block function. So you're an action where you block. Clash is to be able to block with using a power instead of like a weapon or a physical implement. And of course, dodge is to move out of the way. So let's just go through and assign all of those values. And as you can see, we are populating them now with the averages. So intensity works a little bit differently. By default, it's a D4. And if you take the intensity and then assign it, let's say, to perception, you will inherit the 3, and 3d4 is 12 intensity. So intensity is the amount of damage that your character does when they make a new power. So the intensity is assigned at the point at time in which the power is first trained. So if you created an attack or an action, let's say, fireball or something, it will inherit the current intensity value. So if it's a costed action, then it will take the full 12 energy in order to take the action. If it does costed damage, then you would be straight rolling the damage, so that would be 3d4 in this case, because as I said, the default is d4, so you'd be rolling 3d4, and then whatever your damage is, that's the energy cost. That's the reason why the energy is so much higher than the health, because we want to be able to do generally about 10 times the volume of actions in terms of damage as you want to be able to take out of your energy pool. So if I wanted to improve my intensity, of course, I could grab the intensity value, move it up to something like coordination to get the 7d4, which would be 28. But another option for me would be to assign a new hit die as well. So the rule is that a 1 is a d4, a 10 is a d20, and in increments of 2, the proficiency all the way up through the middle is going to assign respectively a d6, a d8, a d10, or a d12. So if I moved it up to the ingenuity, which is a 14, a +1, it's not going to change that from a d4 because a 1 is a d4. But if I went to a 2, then it would turn into a d6. If it was a 3, it would also be a d6. Then you go up to a +4, or a +5, that would take it to a d8. So if I go all the way up here to spirit, where it's a +9, I'm now at d12. So my intensity is now 84, or 7 d12 damage. Attack values, they get assigned as well. These are modifications to your d20 roll to attack an opponent. And so we can just go through. The defense is the way that you subtract from an opponent's d20 roll. And of course, this inherits all these values up in the character sheet. And then, of course, when you're actually wanting to upgrade your character, let's say for the sake of like fortitude, we can add, since we have extra AP left over, 10 AP, we have 10 AP to assign. As you can see, the values are changing, but they're not changing yet in the combat sheet. And the reason why is because you haven't committed to spend those values. So let's say we wanted to really ramp up our power defense, which is a +9, our dodge, we want to increase that, and our intensity, we want to get that d20, right? So let's put all 10 points into our spirit, get it all the way up to the full 100. Again, it's not reflected up here yet. So let's hit spend. And you can see it's updated. We now have a +10, which is inherited over here. This value went up, so our dodge just increased, and we went to that d20. So now we do 140 intensity, and it's all reflected up here. Now, I also brought in damage as an option. So I've mentioned before that we can damage things. I think the example that I used was damaging a person's fortitude. So I have over here in the inspector the ability to manually input damage. This will, of course, only be handed over through the combat settings. But let's say we did 12 damage to a person's fortitude. It's going to be reflected right down here. Then if I did maybe 3 damage to a character, standard 3 damage, then of course they're going to have a 57 current HP left. Of course, there's also the option of doing damage to a character's max HP through dismemberment and things like that. So all of those damage assignments are currently active and involved. And they're all fully available. What is not really working for me right now inside of the character builder, and what I would like to change, is that there is, put it straightforward, it's very messy code. There's a ton of stuff in there that I need to do. I was getting really slowed up in the early stages trying to think it through. Try and get it exactly right from the beginning, and eventually I just said, all caution aside, and said, let's just get this thing built, and then I'll have to refactor it after it's all done. In truth, I'm not going to immediately dive into refactoring the code because it's there, it's working, it's functional, and I think I will learn more by building something new and from scratch. So I'm going to dive into the action trainer next, work my way through the logic of it, try and build it up with proper classes. And now I've got some experience building in Unity. I've got a sense of exactly what kind of architecture I'll be looking at. So the next step for me is going to be diving into the logic of the action trainer, getting it laid out, getting it built. And I'm going to start from the beginning of trying to organize and work out the structure of the classes and the way that the information needs to be distributed in order to be able to correctly build the thing up.